Okay, got the Geissele Super Sabra trigger pack reinstalled, and I will go through some trigger pulse weight tests. It's about 4.5 pounds. Again, about 4.5 pounds. That was a little closer to 5 pounds. So I think on average this thing pulls about 4.5 pounds, which is a huge improvement over the factory one, which if you remember, it very easily topped out my scale at 8 pounds. So now I'm going to get a little bit further into what, even though you have the lighter pull, things that I don't like about the factory OEM trigger shoe. So when you put the Super Sabra trigger pack in there, you are left with a very spongy feeling trigger. And I almost want to say that this is like it's like a 3-stage trigger, because you have take up, you have some very light slop, some take up, and then you hit a wall, you pull a little bit more, and then there's another wall. So slop loose, slight slop to first wall, a little bit more to second wall, and then the trigger breaks. And then the reset's not horrible. It is tactile, but that sponginess is something that I'm hoping that the lightning bow does away with. I have went ahead and put the trigger pull scale on the trigger with the the Geissele Super Sabra trigger pack in there, and those 3 stages that I just mentioned, it is almost like, at least when I measured it, this here was about 1 pound, that initial take up. The second wall was about went up to 3 pounds, and then when it breaks at 4.5 pounds. So really hoping to see if the travel altogether, the sponginess feeling, if we can get that corrected with the Super Sabra lightning bow. I'm going to go ahead and break this thing down. I'll go through the video, watching the 2 videos that I have mentioned on the IWI website, YouTube channel, along with the other one. And again, I will include links for that in the description, so you guys can see how that's all done. Step by step, it is a little more in depth than just doing an AR trigger. So I'll see you back when I get the trigger bow installed. Now that I have the OEM trigger shoe removed, I did want to show you guys a side-by-side difference between the two. You see the Geissele is a very solid one piece, whereas you can see that the OEM trigger is a bit hollowed out. I don't know if you could say that's stamped steel, but it is definitely not solid like the Geissele. The OEM does seem to be made out of 2 pieces. This is the part that connects to the trigger linkage. This is where the trigger pin goes through, so as you pull the trigger, it moves the bar back and forth. And I could see, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, where there's a little bit of slack that I didn't like. That could be very well it right there. So see, it's held in with a little roll pin. But again, the Geissele, super solid, machined out of bar steel, I believe. And then there also is an adjustment for travel. I'll probably just leave it where it is, as long as it works and the trigger moves freely, there's no interference. Though I don't think that really makes a difference with it, but I know that watching Very Traumatic's install video, he did mention that he left it where it was also, which I'll do, and see if that makes any kind of difference or if I like the way that it is. So that's it. Something I wanted to highlight that was not pointed out in the other installation video for the Geissele trigger was when you go and put the new trigger shoe in here, the lightning bow trigger shoe, this is your your trigger pin retaining wire. And what this does is this drops in here, into this little hole right there in the top of the trigger shoe. And what that does is once you go and reinstall the trigger pin, once it goes through, this locks into that groove, which prevents this pin from walking in or out. He did say that in the video that getting this to get lined up can be trial and error, because as you push it through from left to right, you can't really tell where that lines up enough to get it pinned, and that it's trial and error. So what I did want to point out was something that I found to be pretty easy, and it may be obvious to some people, but I just did want to point it out because this is what made it quick and easy for me, instead of going through trial and error and trying to guess where that needs to go. So what I did was I started by installing the trigger pin, pushing it in far enough to where I knew it was almost fully through, going ahead and dropping in the retaining clip. And if you can see there, it's not fully seated, it's sitting up. So all you simply have to do is push a little bit of downward pressure as you push in the pin, which use a roll punch to make it a little bit easier. Push that in slowly, even pressure, until you push enough, and once it finds that groove in the trigger pin, it'll drop right into place. And then from there, you can go screw that down with the retaining screw. He did also point out in the video that you have to fight with putting the little screw in. If you just get it into position where it needs to be over the hole, tilt your gun forward and let gravity work with you, tighten it down. Because I can imagine that if you were using a trying to use your fingers or a pair of needle nose to get it in there, that it would be very challenging to try to line that up. So that was just an quick and easy install tip to find the groove in your trigger pin. And that's that. Also, another thing, this is a great opportunity that while you have it broken down this far, with the barrel removed and everything, this is your gas tube. It's when I took this thing out of there, it was absolutely caked with carbon buildup. So this is a great opportunity to go ahead and pull that out of there, not using any kind of solvent or oil. Take yourself a shotgun board cleaner brush and just rub it through there a couple times, hit it with an air blower. Gets it nice and clean as a whistle. And then same thing with the areas down in here. Mine wasn't super dirty, but there was some debris and gunk in there, so I went ahead and hit it with the air blower, cleaned it up with a rag and any surfaces that I could see. All right, everyone, so I got the Geissele Super Sabra lightning bow installed. Install was super straightforward. I do highly encourage you to go and look up the IWI Academy video on YouTube of how to remove a SAR barrel, and then also reference Very Traumatic's video on the actual trigger install itself, as the IWI video does not go into detail of messing anything with the trigger. But what I do like about the IWI video is it goes into a lot more detail and pointers about disassembly and reassembly. Not saying that Very Traumatic's video would not do that. I just kind of balanced between the two of them, bounce back and forth. It was, again, super straightforward as long as you have the right tools. Main tool being the barrel locking wrench, which I know I hear some people use screwdrivers. I hear some people that made their own get varied results. Some people says they screwed up the locking mechanism here. I would just recommend that you go ahead and get the tool. It's $15 on IWI's website. I know Bullpup Armory, I think they offer one also. But just paying attention to details and following it step by step, it definitely was not a hard process at all, and I did not run into any issues. So getting back to the trigger. Lightning bow install. Is it worth it? $100 plus shipping depending on where you get it from. To me, yes, absolutely. And I don't definitely will say that this is not just something that is, sometimes you buy some accessories and it could possibly just be a mental thing that makes you think that it's better. You've got an investment in money and time, or maybe because you really like a certain part or brand, but definitely not with the Geissele. So just again, the feel is just super solid compared to this hollow OEM trigger. Same style trigger, at least the same feel that was on my Geissele Ace, and I just really don't like it. It just feels cheap. The Geissele lightning bow, it's completely solid. It feels solid. On top of that, the sponginess is gone. You can see there's take up there, and as like I mentioned in the video a little bit earlier, there is an adjustment screw on the inside that you could make an adjustment for to remove or give you more slack. Unfortunately, you are not going to be able to really test that until you get the gun back together 100%. Very traumatic, recommended, or at least he said in his video that he just left it on the factory settings, so I followed the same thing, and I'm fine with that. There's really not much take up at all, but what I do really like is that there's no more of that three-stage trigger feel that I mentioned earlier in the video. It's just you have this little bit of take up, and then there's a very defined wall, so no more three-stage, and on top of that, it no longer feels spongy. It is a nice, clean break. Reset feels the same. Minimal travel after resetting. And feels very good. Feels very good physically on the trigger face, on my finger. No more three-stage, no more sponginess. This thing is nice. Really nice. So just that alone is worth the money to me. I felt that this would be a very suitable upgrade. Makes a big difference. With the X95, there was a big upgrade to the trigger pack, from which I've heard is a lot closer feeling to the Super Sabra trigger pack, and that the trigger pack is not so much of a needed accessory as it is in the SAR. But it was very interesting after owning this gun for almost 2 years, having just the trigger pack, not having the trigger bow, if it would make a difference, and the feel is great. I definitely do love it a lot. Moving on to the trigger pull weight, this part here, I can admit it surprised me quite a bit because I was not expecting any real change in the trigger pull weight. I don't recall if in Very Traumatic's video if they talked about it at all, but if you remember in the beginning of the video, I pulled trigger pull weights with the Super Sabra trigger pack, and it was ranging around 4.5 pounds. I think one of them, and it might have been a fluke, was closer to 5. So about 4.5 pounds is how it felt before, or what it pulled at before. And now with the Super Sabra trigger bow, a little over 3 pounds. A little over 3 pounds. And for a third, about a little closer to 3.5. So was not expecting that. Was not expecting that at all. A lot of people may feel that that's too light for a battle rifle. It is feeling very light, but my Geissele SSP that I have installed in my Mark 18, it's a little bit more than that, but not much. So I like it. I like it a lot. Just something to keep in mind if you don't want a trigger that is that light. Maybe the trigger bow is not the direction you want to go in your SAR. Maybe you just want to stick with the Geissele Super Sabra trigger pack. Or if you have an OEM trigger pack, maybe it's helpful to know that by installing the lightning bow, you can reduce that OEM 10-11 pound weight by a pound and a half. And that could help out. At least I know that these right now, currently, these are pretty easily found. It seems like they do these in batches. I know the trigger bow and the trigger pack have been out of stock for a long time. Again, I was very fortunate that my secondhand Tavor already came with it. But I had not been able to find one of these, the trigger bow itself, since I've owned the gun. Now, I haven't been on a daily search for it, but I have checked on a somewhat regular basis since I got it and have not been able to find it in stock. About 2 weeks ago, it seemed like Geissele released a bunch of trigger packs and lightning bows. At least looking on the forums, people were still looking for them. I know that I had found a couple places that had them in stock. I want to say that the Geissele website themselves had them, but it seems like they are back out of stock. But these here seem to be still available. Bought this one here from Optics Planet. It was $100, plus I had some Planet Bucks because I buy stuff from them quite often. I know some people are hesitant to buy from Optics Planet. I have placed many orders from them since 2020, since the beginning of the pandemic, and I have never had an issue with them whatsoever. I think the one thing that people don't or get burned by is that they don't take a look and see that something is out of stock or on back order. And yes, I agree that Optics Planet should not take your money if they don't have something in stock. But just pay attention. As long as it says the item is in stock, they get it shipped out. They process it very quickly. They get it shipped out super quickly. Many times they're running promotions where you can get like free 2-day air and you get it in like 2 days. So right now, Optics Planet, unless this is sold out in the last few days, $99.99, I believe the price was. So Geissele Super Sabra lightning bow trigger upgrade. Is it worth the money? Depending on all the things that I brought up. Is it going to be worth it to you? That's something you're going to have to answer for yourself. But for me personally, I'm super stoked with the purchase. Love the feel of the trigger. If you like the video, please like, please subscribe, share it if you will. And also, if you have any questions or any comments or anything, go ahead and please leave them below. So again, thanks for watching the video, and I hope this helps somebody out. Thanks.